Tonight I'm going after Comet C2020 NEOWISE, which is one of the most amazing comets that's been visible in the night sky for about 25 years, and it's not going to be back again for 6,800 years, so I want to get it right. So I've taken some pictures on a fixed tripod with a 400mm zoom lens, but now I want to go one step further and use my tracking mount and see if I can get a better shot. So I'm going to do my setup. So we start with a nice sturdy tripod, and first thing we'll do is put the iOptron Skyguider Pro mount on it. So start with this out azimuth mount, and that will screw onto the thread at the top of the mount. Good and firmly on there, and that's got azimuth screws and altitude screws, so that will be used later in the polar alignment. So now we fit the actual tracking mount. This is the iOptron Skyguider Pro tracking mount. That just slides into the V and tighten up that knob there. So the next thing we need is the counterweight bar and bracket. Now this is an optional fit if you're using a lightweight camera with a short focal length lens. You don't necessarily need this, but I'm going to put quite a heavy mass on the mount today, so I'm going to use the counterweight bar, and I've got this declination rotating piece here, which is important for being able to point my camera where I want to. So I'll attach that. I've pulled the plug out for the polar scope already and replaced it in the top here. So there's my counterweight bar, and I'll just pop the plug back in. Try not to drop it this time. There we go, so there's the counterweight bar. And the RA clutch on the Skyguider Pro is this black disc here. So just loosen that off so we've got a free movement there. Okay, so the next thing to do is to attach the camera. Now I've done a little bit of homework here. I've got a Canon EOS 5DS with 100 to 400mm zoom on it. The lens comes with this L bracket, but I've built a plate. You can see here it's a steel plate. It's made out of 2mm plate. I've put an Arca Swiss clamp on there, which you'll see the reason for that in a minute. It's to do with the focus motor, and I've also got the iOptron mating part for the declination adjuster screwed on there. So that's got a bolt going through that adapter, through the steel plate, and then into the lens L bracket, and I've got some little bits of thin foam in there to give it grip, and that's tightened up really nice and tight. So we'll fit that onto the deck bracket and do up the screws so it's good and secure. Just tighten up that RA clutch. There are 3 holes for these screws, and you can choose which 2 of them to use. So there's 2 thumb screws but 3 holes. Okay, so there is the basic camera on the mount, and now just need to think about balancing. At the moment it's weight heavy, so I'll just pull that in a bit. We'll do that more precisely later, but that's roughly balanced. Actually the balance is going to change a lot now, because I'm going to zoom it out. I'm going to take all my shots at 400mm. So zoom that up to 400mm, lock it off at 400, and we'll just check the balance again. It's actually still pretty close, really good. So we'll take the lens cap off. Now the reason for the Arca Swiss clamp here is that I'm going to control my focus kind of remotely on a little handheld kit. So I've got a motor focus controller that I bought online, and I've made a little L bracket again out of 2mm steel plate, and that's got an Arca Swiss bracket on the bottom of it. Okay, so that mounts onto the this plate, onto the Arca Swiss clamp that I fitted there, and that is going to be driving a pulley belt. So I've got a pulley belt. It's actually a 350mm GT2 belt. Just pop it over the lens onto the focusing ring, and then by loosening the clamp here I can slide the gear on the focus motor in, engage it on the pulley, just line up the pulley with the focusing wheel, tension the belt, and once the belt's at the tension I want, and just lock it off. So I've got a good pulley belt tension, and that will drive my focus. Now you can see that's created a bit of imbalance in the mount, which I'm going to have to partly live with, because I really need a bit more weight on the other side to counter that, but I haven't got that. So we'll make do. So we'll just balance it off on horizontal position. That's pretty close there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is fit the lens hood. Now you might say, well, there's no sun, so why? But that's just about the lens seeing a bit less of the sky and therefore being less prone to building up dew. Just going to loosen those off and rotate a bit so you can see that a bit better. Okay, tighten them off. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is fit a dew heater. So I've got a dew heater here. I'm going to wrap that around the end of the 400mm lens so I can warm that objective lens and prevent dew build up. Run the cable back down there. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to fit on here is a remote shutter release. I've got a Pixel Pro, a TW283, a fairly low cost wireless remote control, and that's mounted by fitting, turn it around so you can see. So it comes in two parts. You've got the part that goes on the camera, and this just mounts in the flash gun shoe, and there's a thumb wheel that tightens it up. It comes with a short cable that plugs into the remote, and that other end plugs into this. So that's for the remote. The other part is just like a TV remote control for actually controlling the shutter. And then the last item is the battery pack and buttons for the remote focus controller, and that just plugs into the back of the focus motor there. So I'll just turn that around so you can see it. Okay, so we've got the focus motor controller, and we can just do a little test and make sure that is driving the focus wheel. That's turning forwards and backwards very nicely. So that's my setup. I'm going to polar align this mount and get my focus. I'm going to use a batten off mask on the front here to get my star focus, and I'll use Capella because that's close to where the Comet is. And once I'm nicely focused and polar aligned, we'll get this rotated round. It'll probably actually be set up somewhere around this position because the Comet is going to be low in the north, so it's going to be roughly like this when it's operating, and I'll use something like a 20 to 30 second exposure time, a nice low ISO so I have low noise, and I have the aperture probably at about f5.6 or f7, something like that, just to correct for any slight focus error I may make, just to nip up that focus nicely. And I'm shooting raw, and I'll see if I can get something like 30-40 pictures of the Comet. Try and fill the frame with the Comet, and then my plan is to stack those in Deep Sky Stacker. I'm really excited about doing this. At the moment it's really cloudy, it's frustrating, but the forecast says it's going to clear at 11 o'clock. I do hope it's right.